Commander Lisa Patterson stood at the window of her new office, gazing at the twin suns of Centauri Prime as they set behind the gleaming spires of the Galactic War Academy. After 15 years of active service in the human Space Force, she had hoped teaching would be easier. She was wrong. The Academy's halls, with their polished marble floors and ancient battle tapestries, had trained military leaders for 3 centuries. Every major species in the galaxy sent their best and brightest here. But something felt off about the whole place. Lisa turned away from the window when she heard a knock at her door. "Come in," she said, straightening her dark blue instructor's uniform. Peter Morrison, one of her most promising human students, walked in. He was young, barely 20, with short brown hair and tired eyes that suggested too many late nights studying. "Commander Patterson, do you have a moment to discuss my simulation results?" Lisa nodded and gestured to a chair. She already knew what this was about. Yesterday's fleet combat simulation had ended with Peter using an unusual tactic that the Academy's scoring system had marked as a failure. "The computer said I failed," Peter said, pulling out his tablet. "But I saved more ships and achieved the mission objective faster than anyone else in the class." Lisa sat down behind her desk and pulled up the simulation replay. On the holographic display above her desk, tiny ships moved in complex patterns. Peter's fleet broke from traditional arrow formations, instead splitting into small, irregular groups that confused and overwhelmed the enemy. "The scoring system is programmed to reward traditional tactics," Lisa explained. "Large fleet formations, synchronized attacks, predictable patterns, the kind of warfare that hasn't changed much in the last 100 years. Peter leaned forward. "But that's exactly the problem, isn't it? We're still fighting like it's the last century. The simulations don't even account for the new neural interfaces human Space Force is developing." Before Lisa could respond, another knock interrupted them. Admiral Kistvak, the Academy's Centaurian headmaster, entered without waiting for a response. His tall, insectoid form nearly touched the ceiling, and his compound eyes reflected the light in a way that always made Lisa uncomfortable. "Commander Patterson," the Admiral's translator device converted his clicks and chirps into standard English. "I see you're discussing young Morrison's creative interpretation of yesterday's exercise." Peter started to speak, but Lisa raised a hand to stop him. She knew how this conversation would go. The Admiral was old school, even by Centaurian standards. "Admiral," Lisa said carefully, "I was just explaining the scoring system to Cadet Morrison. His solution, while unorthodox, showed remarkable efficiency." The Admiral's antennae twitched, a sign of disagreement in Centaurian body language. "The purpose of these exercises is to teach proper military doctrine, Commander. For 300 years, this academy has produced the finest fleet commanders in the galaxy by teaching proven methods. With respect, sir," Lisa stood up slowly, "maybe it's time we questioned those methods. The galaxy isn't the same as it was 300 years ago." The Admiral's carapace took on a darker shade, a clear sign of disapproval. "The basics of space combat haven't changed, Commander. Mass times acceleration equals force. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. The laws of physics are constant. But our understanding and application of those laws keeps evolving," Peter said quietly. Both Lisa and the Admiral turned to look at him. He swallowed hard but continued. "The neural interfaces we're developing could change everything about how we fight." The Admiral's translator crackled with a sound that might have been a laugh. "Ah yes, the famous human innovations. Tell me, Cadet Morrison, how many fleets has your neural interface commanded? How many battles has it won?" Lisa intervened before Peter could respond. "Admiral, perhaps we could schedule a proper meeting to discuss updating some of our teaching methods. The Academy's mission is to prepare commanders for future conflicts, not past ones." The Admiral's antennae waved dismissively. "I have a meeting with the Board of Governors now. We will discuss this later, Commander Patterson. Cadet Morrison, I suggest you focus on mastering the basics before proposing revolutions." He turned and ducked through the doorway. his ceremonial cape swishing behind him. After the Admiral left, Peter slumped in his chair. "I'm sorry, Commander. I didn't mean to cause trouble." Lisa sat on the edge of her desk. "You didn't cause trouble, Peter. You just pointed out something that needs to change." She looked at the simulation replay, still floating above her desk. The Academy has been teaching the same tactics since before humans joined the Galactic Alliance. But space warfare isn't just about big fleets anymore. It's about information, adaptation, and quick thinking. Things humans excel at. Peter looked up at her. "The other instructors say humans are too unpredictable, too chaotic. They say we need to learn to fight properly like the other species." Lisa smiled. "Maybe being unpredictable is our strength. The galaxy's about to change, Peter. I can feel it." She walked back to the window, watching as the last rays of sunlight painted the Academy's ancient walls in shades of gold and purple. Later that evening, Lisa sat in her quarters reviewing student performance data. The pattern was clear. Human students consistently scored lower in traditional exercises, but showed remarkable success in adaptive scenarios. The Academy's teaching methods weren't just outdated, they were actively holding back innovation. Her computer chimed with an incoming message. It was from her old colleague at Human Space Force R&D, Dr. Catherine Wells. The message was brief, but exciting. "First tests successful. Neural interface exceeding all expectations. The way we fight is about to change forever." Lisa leaned back in her chair, thinking about Peter's simulation and the Admiral's dismissal of human innovations. The Academy had stood unchanged for 3 centuries, teaching the same tactics to generation after generation of officers. But change was coming, whether they were ready or not. She began drafting a proposal for updating the Academy's curriculum. It would probably be rejected. The Admiral and his traditionalist allies on the board would see to that. But she had to try. Because somewhere out there, the enemy was evolving, developing new tactics and technologies. And if the Academy couldn't adapt, if it couldn't embrace new ideas and methods, then it wasn't just failing its students, it was failing the entire galaxy. The next morning, Lisa watched as her students filed into the simulation chamber for their daily exercises. Peter caught her eye and gave a small nod. Today's scenario was a standard fleet defense exercise, the kind the Academy had been running for decades. But as she initialized the simulation, Lisa made a small change to the parameters, just enough to make the standard tactics less effective. As the exercise began, she smiled to herself. Sometimes the best way to teach wasn't to tell students they were wrong, but to show them why they needed to think differently. Change was coming to the Galactic War Academy, whether Admiral Kistvak liked it or not, and Lisa Patterson intended to be ready when it arrived. The twin suns rose over Centauri Prime, casting long shadows through the Academy's halls. Another day of teaching old methods was beginning, but beneath the surface, the seeds of revolution were already taking root. In her office, Lisa began preparing for her next class, knowing that somewhere in the Human Space Force labs, Dr. Wells and her team were about to change everything. The traditional ways wouldn't last forever. They never did. The only question was whether the Academy would lead the change or be left behind by it. Dr. Catherine Wells rubbed her tired eyes as she stared at the test results on her holographic screen. The clock on the wall of her lab at the Human Space Force Research Center showed 3 a.m., but she couldn't sleep. Not now. Not when they were so close to a breakthrough. Running simulation test number 847, the computer announced in its calm voice. On the main screen, a virtual ship danced through an asteroid field, its movements smooth and natural. Unlike previous tests, this time the ship wasn't being controlled by a single pilot. Instead, Lieutenant Christopher Baker lay in a neural interface pod across the room, his mind linked to not just one ship, but an entire squadron. "How are you feeling, Chris?" Catherine asked, watching his vital signs on a separate monitor. "It's amazing," Christopher's voice came through the speakers. "The ships feel like they're part of my body, like extra arms and legs. I can move them all at once without even thinking about it. Director Amanda Carter walked into the lab, her footsteps echoing in the quiet room. She was still wearing her formal uniform, probably just finished with another budget meeting. "Please tell me you have good news, Dr. Wells. The board is breathing down my neck about project costs." Catherine smiled and gestured to the main screen. "Watch this." She pressed a few buttons, and suddenly the simulation changed. Now Christopher's squadron was facing off against a traditional battle group using standard combat tactics. The result was stunning. Christopher's ships moved like a swarm of insects, each one perfectly coordinated with the others. They darted through gaps in the enemy formation that shouldn't have existed, struck from impossible angles, and seemed to predict their opponent's moves before they happened. "Time to victory, 45 seconds, the computer announced. Enemy forces neutralized with 0 friendly casualties. Amanda's eyes widened. That's impossible. The simulation was set to Grandmaster level. Not impossible, Catherine said, pulling up more data. The neural interface doesn't just let Chris control multiple ships. It lets him feel them, understand them in a way no traditional control system can match. And when we add the AI support, she tapped another screen, bringing up the neural pattern analysis. The AI learns from his instincts, while he learns from its calculations. They make each other better. Christopher's voice came through again, excited despite his fatigue. It's like having a really smart co-pilot in my head, but for every ship at once. The AI handles all the complex math and physics, while I focus on strategy and quick decisions. Amanda walked closer to the neural pod, studying the simple-looking helmet that connected Christopher to the system. "How many ships can he control?" "Right now, 8, Catherine answered. "But we think we can push it to 12 or more with practice. The AI helps manage the cognitive load." "The board won't believe this," Amanda said, shaking her head. "We need a live demonstration." Catherine started to protest, but Christopher interrupted. "I'm ready. We've run nearly 1,000 simulations. Let me show them what this system can do." The next week, the research center's testing range was filled with observers. Military officers, government officials, and even a few representatives from the Galactic War Academy stood behind protective shields, watching as Christopher suited up. Catherine helped him adjust the neural interface helmet. "Remember, this is just like the simulations. Don't push yourself too hard." Christopher grinned. "Don't worry, Doc. I've got the easy job. The AI does all the hard work." 8 sleek fighters sat on the launch pad, their engines humming quietly. Each one was state-of-the-art, but they were about to do something no one had ever seen before. "Neural interface online," the computer announced. "AI systems active. Pilots sync at optimal levels." Christopher closed his eyes as the connection formed. When he opened them again, he could feel every ship, every engine, every weapon system. The AI's presence was there too, like a whispered voice offering suggestions and calculations. "Begin combat demonstration," Amanda ordered from the control room. The range came alive with drone fighters, artillery platforms, and electronic warfare units. It was the kind of force that would normally require an entire fleet to handle. Christopher took a deep breath, and his ships launched as one. They moved through space like dancers in a perfectly choreographed performance. The AI predicted enemy firing solutions and suggested optimal paths, while Christopher's human intuition found opportunities no computer would have considered. In the control room, Catherine watched the observers' faces change from skepticism to amazement. The drones couldn't land a single hit. Christopher's ships seemed to flow around their attacks like water around rocks. "Is this some kind of trick?" one of the Academy representatives asked. "No human pilot can coordinate moves like that." "No trick," Catherine said proudly. "Just the perfect combination of human creativity and machine precision. The neural interface lets the pilot feel space itself, while the AI handles the complex calculations. Together, they're greater than either could be alone." The demonstration ended in less than 3 minutes, every target neutralized, Every objective completed, with 0 damage to Christopher's ships. When Christopher emerged from the neural pod, his face was tired but happy. That felt even better than the simulations, he said, accepting a bottle of water from Catherine. Amanda was already talking to the observers, most of whom were frantically making calls to their superiors. This wasn't just an improvement in space combat. This was a revolution. Later that evening, Catherine sat in her office, writing up the test results. Her computer chimed with a message from Lisa Patterson at the Academy. Saw the demonstration. This changes everything. The Academy won't be able to ignore this. Catherine smiled as she typed her reply. The neural interface wasn't just a new weapon or a better control system. It was proof that the old ways of thinking about space combat were obsolete. Human creativity, supported by AI precision, was about to reshape warfare across the galaxy. She looked out her window at the 8 fighters sitting quietly on the landing pad. Tomorrow, they would begin training more pilots. Soon, there would be hundreds, then thousands of neural interface users. The traditional war schools, with their rigid formations and outdated tactics, would have to adapt or become obsolete. Christopher knocked on her door. Got a minute, Doc? I had some ideas about improving the neural sync. Come in, she said. I think we're just getting started. As they discussed improvements to the system, Catherine thought about all the pilots and cadets still learning the old ways. Change was coming faster than anyone had expected. The galaxy was about to learn that humans had more to offer than just following the traditional rules of warfare. The stars shone brightly outside her window, and somewhere out there, the future of space combat was being rewritten, one neural connection at a time. Captain Daniel Stewart stood on the bridge of the HSS Valor, watching the border sensors carefully. His ship was the first in the fleet to be fully equipped with the new neural interface system, and he still couldn't believe how different everything felt. The ship wasn't just a ship anymore. It was like an extension of his own body. Another quiet day on the border. First Officer Maria Rodriguez said, checking her traditional control panels. She hadn't fully accepted the new technology yet, preferring to rely on the old ways of doing things. Quiet isn't always good, Daniel replied, his mind connected to the ship's sensors through his neural link. The AI in his head agreed, pointing out subtle patterns in the background radiation that didn't look quite right. Suddenly, alarms blared across the bridge. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Maria shouted. Drachnid signatures. The main screen lit up with red dots, dozens of them. The Drachnids, a warrior race known for their aggressive expansion, had launched a surprise attack. Their ships, massive and covered in heavy armor, emerged from FTL travel in a perfect attack formation. This is Admiral Gregory Phillips of the 3rd Fleet. A message came through. All ships form up in standard defensive pattern. This is not a drill. Daniel watched as the human fleet started moving into the traditional formation they'd all learned at the Academy. But he knew better. The neural interface was showing him something different. Gaps and weaknesses in the Drachnid formation that no human eye could spot. Admiral Phillips, Daniel called over the comm. Request permission to break formation and engage independently. Denied. Captain Stewart, the Admiral's voice was firm. Maintain position in the defensive line. Maria looked at Daniel with concern. Sir, we should follow orders. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the ship's systems through the neural link. The AI was processing combat solutions faster than any human could, while his own instincts saw opportunities the AI might miss. Together, they were seeing possibilities no one else could. Sometimes we have to trust what we know is right, Daniel said. Then he opened a channel to the whole fleet. This is Captain Stewart. Watch what one ship with the new neural interface can do. Before anyone could stop him, the Valor broke formation. Through the neural link, Daniel activated 7 drone ships that had been hidden in the cargo hold. Now he had 8 ships under his direct control, just like in the training simulations. Captain, what are you doing? Maria asked, watching in shock as the drones deployed around them. Showing everyone the future, Daniel replied. His mind merged with both the AI and his small squadron of ships. The Drachnid fleet opened fire, their energy weapons lighting up space. But Daniel's ships moved like they were part of a dance, flowing through gaps in the enemy formation that shouldn't have existed. The AI calculated perfect firing solutions while Daniel's human intuition guided the overall strategy. One Drachnid ship exploded, then another. Daniel's squadron struck from multiple angles at once, confusing the enemy's targeting systems. The Drachnids tried to adjust their formation, but they were too slow, too predictable. Impossible, Maria whispered, watching the tactical display. We're actually winning. Admiral Phillips' voice came over the comm again, this time filled with awe. All ships, support the Valor's attack. Break formation and engage at will. The battle turned into chaos, exactly the kind of situation where human creativity shined. The Drachnid fleet, trained in traditional tactics, couldn't adapt fast enough to the unexpected strategy. Through his neural link, Daniel felt every move, every shot, every victory. The AI helped him process the massive amount of information, turning raw data into clear tactical choices. His 8 ships danced through the battle like leaves in the wind, striking vital systems with surgical precision. Drachnid ships are retreating, Maria announced, her voice filled with newfound respect. They're running away. The entire battle had lasted less than 20 minutes. The Valor and its drone squadron had destroyed 12 enemy ships and damaged many more, all without taking significant damage. The rest of the human fleet had barely needed to fire a shot. After the battle, Admiral Phillips himself came aboard the Valor. The old commander looked at the neural interface helmet with new eyes. I've been commanding ships for 30 years, Phillips said, shaking his head in amazement. I've never seen anything like what you just did, Captain Stewart. It's not just me, sir, Daniel explained, disconnecting from the neural interface. It's the combination of human instinct and AI support. We're not replacing traditional skills. We're enhancing them in ways no one thought possible. Maria stepped forward. I was wrong about the new system, Captain. Request permission to begin neural interface training. Daniel smiled. Granted. We'll need all the trained pilots we can get. News of the battle spread quickly across human space and beyond. The Drachnids, who had been pushing at human borders for years, suddenly became much more interested in diplomatic solutions. Later that night, Daniel sat in his quarters, writing his report. His computer chimed with an incoming message from Dr. Catherine Wells. Saw the battle data. You just proved everything we've been working toward. Every war academy in the galaxy is going to want this technology now. He looked out his window at the stars, thinking about how much had changed in just one day. The neural interface hadn't just won a battle. It had shown everyone that the old ways of fighting weren't enough anymore. Captain to the bridge, Maria's voice came over the intercom. We're receiving requests from multiple academies. They want to know more about our new combat system. Daniel smiled as he stood up. Change was happening faster than anyone had expected. The galaxy was about to learn that humans had brought something new to space warfare, something that would make the traditional war schools rethink everything they taught. As he walked to the bridge, he thought about all the cadets still learning old tactics in classrooms across the galaxy. Soon, they would learn a new way of fighting, one that combined the best of human creativity with the precision of machines. The stars seemed brighter somehow as the Valor patrolled the now quiet border. In one battle, they had changed the future of space combat forever. And this was just the beginning. Principal John Howard sat in his office at the Mars Military Academy, watching students walk out of their classes in waves. It wasn't a protest. It was an exodus. Ever since the Battle of the Border, as everyone now called it, traditional military education had lost its appeal. Another 50 withdrawal requests today, Instructor Susan Martinez said, walking into his office with a stack of tablets. Her usually neat uniform looked wrinkled, showing signs of long hours dealing with the crisis. John looked at the school's once busy training yards through his window. The practice areas for traditional fleet formation stood empty. How many students do we have left? Less than half of last month's numbers, Susan replied. They're all trying to transfer to academies that offer the new neural interface training. A knock on the door interrupted them. Eric Thompson, a third-year cadet who had stayed despite the exodus, entered the office. "Sir, I think I have an idea that might help." John gestured for him to continue. At this point, he was willing to listen to anyone who might have a solution. Instead of fighting the change, Eric said, pulling up a presentation on his tablet, "Why don't we lead it? We could transform the academy into something new, something that combines the best of both worlds." Susan leaned forward, interested. "What do you mean?" "Look at what made the Valor's victory so impressive," Eric explained. "It wasn't just the neural interface technology. It was how Captain Stewart used it together with traditional military knowledge. What if we created a program that teaches both?" John stood up and walked to his window. The sun was setting over the Martian desert, casting long shadows across the empty training yards. Transform the entire academy. The board would never approve it. "The board might not have a choice," Susan said quietly. "We've lost more students in the past month than in the last 10 years combined. If we don't change, we'll have to close." John turned back to face them. "Tell me more about your idea, Cadet Thompson." Over the next hour, Eric outlined his vision. Traditional classes would be updated to include neural interface training. Students would learn both old and new tactics, understanding when each approach worked best. The academy would need new facilities, new instructors, and a completely new curriculum. "It's ambitious," John said when Eric finished, "but it might be exactly what we need." The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. John presented the plan to the board, arguing that their choice was between evolution and extinction. After seeing the latest enrollment numbers, they agreed. Susan led the transition team, working day and night to create new courses. They converted old formation training areas into neural interface simulation chambers. Eric helped bridge the gap between traditional instructors and the new technology, showing them how the old lessons could enhance the new methods. "The key is understanding that we're not replacing everything," Susan explained to a group of skeptical instructors. "We're adding new tools to our toolkit. The principles of strategy, leadership, and tactical thinking are still vital. We're just applying them in new ways." One morning, John walked through the academy's halls, watching as workers installed neural interface training pods alongside traditional tactical displays. The sound of construction mixed with the voices of students and instructors learning to use the new systems. "First test of the integrated combat course today," Susan reported, falling into step beside him. "We have 20 students ready to try the combined program." They entered the observation room above the main training hall. Below them, students sat in neural interface pods while instructors monitored their progress on both traditional and new control systems. "Begin simulation," Susan ordered. The students' neural links activated, connecting them to their virtual ships. But unlike the pure neural interface training, this exercise required them to work together using both old and new tactics. "Look at that," Eric said, pointing to the main display. The students were combining traditional fleet formations with the new neural control systems, creating hybrid strategies that neither the old schools nor the pure neural interface programs had considered. "They're innovating," John said, watching as the students completed their mission using a perfect blend of old and new techniques. "They're creating something entirely new." Word of their success spread quickly. Other academies began calling, asking about their integrated program. Even some alien military schools showed interest, realizing that adapting to change was better than becoming obsolete. One evening, as John was preparing to leave his office, he received a message from Captain Stewart of the Valor. "Heard about your new program. You're doing exactly what we need. Teaching people to use every tool available, not just the newest ones. Keep going." The next morning, John stood before the largest group of new students the academy had seen in years. Many were transfers from traditional schools, Others were fresh recruits drawn by the innovative program. Some weren't even human. Alien military organizations had started sending students to learn the new methods. "Welcome to the first day of your integrated combat training," John began. "Here, you won't just learn to use neural interfaces or traditional tactics. You'll learn to understand when each approach works best and how to combine them in ways no one has thought of yet." Susan watched from the back of the room as the students leaned forward, eager to begin. The academy's halls were full of life again, buzzing with the energy of innovation and discovery. Later that day, Eric led a group of students through their first combined exercise. Traditional tactics displayed on one screen, neural interface data on another, while the students learned to think in both old and new ways at once. "The galaxy is changing," he told them. "But change doesn't mean forgetting everything we knew before. It means building something better using all the knowledge we have." As the sun set over Mars, John stood in his office one last time, looking at the now busy training yards. The academy hadn't just survived. It had transformed itself into something new and vital. Students weren't leaving anymore. They were arriving in greater numbers than ever before. "The revolution isn't just about technology," he said to Susan as she brought in the latest enrollment numbers. "It's about being willing to change while remembering what's worth keeping." She nodded, looking out at the training yards where human and alien students practiced together, learning to blend the wisdom of the past with the innovations of the future. "We're not just saving one academy," she said. "We're creating a new way of thinking about military education." The stars began to appear in the Martian sky, twinkling above an academy that had reinvented itself. In classrooms and training halls, a new generation of officers was learning to combine the best of both worlds, proving that revolution didn't have to mean destroying everything that came before. The Great Hall of the Earth Defense Summit glowed with the soft blue light of hundreds of holographic displays. Chancellor Mary Douglas stood at the podium, looking out at the most diverse gathering of military leaders the galaxy had ever seen. Humans sat next to Centaurians, while Drachnid representatives shared tables with species that were their enemies just 2 years ago. 2 years, Mary began, her voice carrying across the quiet hall. "That's all it took to change everything we thought we knew about space combat and military education." In the front row, Admiral Lisa Patterson smiled. After her time as an instructor at the old Galactic War Academy, she now led the newly formed Integrated Combat Innovation Center, the same academy she had once struggled to change. "The numbers speak for themselves," Mary continued, bringing up a holographic display. "Combat effectiveness up by 300%, training accidents down by 80%, and for the first time in galactic history, we're seeing true cooperation between different species in military operations." Peter Morrison, now a lead instructor for the new combat methods, watched from his seat beside Lisa. He remembered being that frustrated kid whose innovative tactics were marked as failures. Now his students came from every corner of the galaxy, each bringing their own unique perspectives to the neural interface training. "But the real revolution," Mary said, "wasn't just in our technology. It was in our thinking. The Patterson Doctrine has changed not just how we fight, but how we teach." Lisa straightened in her seat at the mention of the doctrine named after her. It was simple but powerful. "Innovation without wisdom is dangerous. Tradition without progress is dead. True strength comes from combining both." The Chancellor gestured to a group of cadets at the side of the hall. They wore different uniforms from different worlds, but they all wore the same neural interface insignia. "Would you show us what the future looks like?" Mary asked them. The cadets stepped forward, each taking position at a neural interface station. The main holographic display came alive, showing a complex combat scenario. But unlike the old demonstrations of pure human or pure AI control, this was something new. The audience watched in amazement as the cadets worked together, their neural interfaces linking not just with their ships but with each other. Human creativity flowed alongside Centaurian precision. Drachnid strength combined with Arcturian speed. The AI systems learned from all of them, creating a symphony of different combat styles working as one. "This is what we've been working toward," Lisa whispered to Peter. "Not just humans showing the way, but everyone learning from each other." After the demonstration, the hall buzzed with excited conversation. Species that had never considered working together were now discussing joint training programs. The old barriers were falling, one neural link at a time. Mary called Lisa to the podium. "Admiral Patterson, would you tell us about the future of the innovation centers?" Lisa stood, looking out at the gathered leaders. "When I first started teaching, I thought we needed to throw out all the old ways. I was wrong. What we needed was to learn how to blend the wisdom of experience with the power of innovation." She brought up images of the new training facilities that were opening across the galaxy. Every innovation center is different, because every species brings something unique to the neural interface training. Humans bring creativity. Centaurians bring precision. Drachnids bring strength. The AIs learn from all of us, and we learn from them. Peter watched his old mentor with pride. The frustrated instructor who had once fought against rigid traditions was now leading the galaxy into a new age of military education. But perhaps most importantly, Lisa continued, "We're learning to work together in ways we never could before. The neural interfaces don't just connect us to our ships, they help us understand each other. When you feel how another species thinks and moves in combat, it becomes harder to see them as enemies." In the back of the hall, Dr. Catherine Wells smiled. Her neural interface technology had done more than change combat tactics. It had changed how species interacted with each other. After the main presentation, the leaders broke into smaller groups. Mary watched as former enemies discussed training programs and joint exercises. The traditional war academies hadn't just become obsolete, they had evolved into something better. "Chancellor," a young Drachnid officer approached her. "My government wishes to open an innovation center in our home system. Would Earth be willing to help us set it up?" Mary smiled. 2 years ago, this would have been unthinkable. Of course. That's what the new era is all about, working together. Later that evening, Lisa stood on the observation deck of the summit building, looking out at the Earth below. Peter joined her, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Did you ever think it would turn out like this?" he asked, handing her a cup. Lisa shook her head. "When I was fighting with Admiral Kistvak about changing the Academy's teaching methods. Never. I just wanted to make room for new ideas. Instead, we changed the whole galaxy." They watched as ships from different species took off from the spaceport below, their neural interface signals creating a beautiful pattern of connections in the evening sky. "The funny thing is," Peter said, "we didn't make the old ways obsolete. We just found a better way to use them." Lisa nodded. "That's what the Patterson Doctrine is really about. Not throwing away the past, but building a better future with all the tools we have." As the sun set over Earth, more ships arrived for the summit. Each one carried leaders and cadets eager to learn the new ways of combat and cooperation. The Great Hall still glowed with holographic displays showing the day's demonstrations. Mary joined Lisa and Peter on the observation deck. The Arcturian Council just voted to convert all their military academies to innovation centers, she announced. That's the last major power to join the program. Lisa smiled. Then it's really happening. A whole new era of military education and cooperation. All because one instructor wouldn't accept that the old ways were the only ways, Peter added. The stars began to appear above them, the same stars that had watched over countless battles and conflicts. But now they shine down on a galaxy that was learning a new way to work together, fight together, and grow together. The neural interfaces had changed more than just military tactics. They had shown everyone in the galaxy that the best way forward wasn't to cling to tradition or chase every new innovation. It was to take the best of both, add something new, and create something better than anyone had imagined. As night fell over the Earth Defense Summit, the leaders of the galaxy continued their discussions, planning a future that none of them could have imagined just 2 years ago. The old war academies weren't obsolete after all. They had just grown into something new, something better, something that would help guide the galaxy into a brighter future.